a disclaimer on your motherfucking new age messages so you don't mislead people. I know everyone wants to get like clickbaity and shit, but you know what it's really about at the real crux of it? It's all about building trust. And that's the easiest thing that can be taken away. The hardest thing to build and the easiest thing to be taken away, and the most important thing that holds shit together, a real relationship together, is trust. And the trust with God, it's like, it's just more magnified on a harder level, because if God doesn't trust us and he takes that away from us, that could be the essence of our quote unquote suffering, end quote. Because everything is about some type of trust. It's not necessarily do we trust God, does God trust us, you know? Because if he doesn't trust us, then why would he really sustain our blessings, you know? They say God could take shit away, and I'm just thinking out loud, if God could take shit away, then we're misidentifying what God is, because God is before the devil, and the devil forgot that God is the boss because God put it that way, you know? So God is his own devil, you know? But like, even whether you're talking about the relationship with God or not, if you're talking about human to human micro relationships, there still needs to be some trust earned. And within trust that's earned, you have to kind of like prove yourself in a certain context. Not necessarily prove who you are per se, but prove what you're capable of. Because no one really it's naturally gracefully obvious. Like, no one really cares, but they care about the mutuality of, can there be a proper interdependency, you know? Because if there's not a proper interdependency, then we wouldn't need relationships. And we need relationships because and obviously I'm gonna buy some mouthwash, okay? And but it's about trust, you know? And we don't really realize that. We don't really realize it's about trust. We go by from relationship to relationship, and we just try to get our 1-2 in non-trustworthy ways, and it just is what it is. It's like in the genetics. Some teachers say it unique. Some unique teachers say it like people who are quote unquote either fake, end quote, or quote unquote, you know, conniving, end quote. And I say quote unquote because it's like a more or less thing, obviously. Some of them can't help it. Why? Because it's in the genetics, you know? They're overcoming genetic patterns. And this is advanced intelligence, you know? Like anybody who I see the day to day and they caught wind, I'm like on a professional balanced level, mind you. And within that professional balanced level, the irony is here, I'm bringing a solution for the collective masses. So, because I'm still aware of this shit, you know? But it's like, why, you know? Why can't it be helped? Why is it like legit that some people are like that? Because their spirit resonated with that somehow, and now they are fulfilling that resonance in spirit through genetics. You know what I'm saying, respectively? So within all of that, it's like, you know, all of these new age messages, they could be kind of misleading because they're not necessarily saying the blunt, raw truth of how people are, you know, how people are working, whether they, and on its own isolated variable, the confusion and the lack of knowing and intelligence is an isolated variable from your genetic emotional habit patterns. Those are isolated variables. So they're different things, but they still coincide though. And people don't have that critical thinking for some reason, because the collective has leaned towards confusion for however it did from genetic, you know, quote unquote detrimental habit patterns, end quote. So like these new age messages, they're cool and all, but they could be misleading. And if it's misleading, it's not really like, you're missing the point of the real whole truth. And I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying that's what it be. And if we don't have the critical thinking, then the fat higher irony is, then the shit that we're going for, it will be, we won't have a whole path to it. You know what I'm saying? Like a whole and realistic path. So if you want to build a relationship, it's like with someone, there has to be mutual trust. And I know some people are like they are what they are. You know, some people, like, they have a particular mindset and emotional preset of them not giving a fuck. That's okay. You know, some people don't give a fuck about God. That's okay, you know, like the universal energy one. Because Advaita Vedanta and, like, quote unquote New Age messages, they say everyone's God somehow, you know, however that is, you know. And I broke that down in a different video, particularly how that is, you know. But that's in the underground. So like it's known, but what's known, sometimes it's not necessarily, like, distributed. And since it's not distributed, the collective is susceptible to confusion. And then if the collectible is susceptible to confusion, then a particular type of suffering could grow from that confusion. And then we're in a particular, like, detrimental energy loop of confusion, quote unquote, some type of suffering, end quote. And then after, some type of complaining. Do you smell irony here? It's kind of donk, you know? So, like, and I know, like, people were like, I know people don't, like, I just get it, you know? It's how you do it. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's like, but if you don't have some type of disclaimer with your message, you're susceptible to misleading someone else. And who's to say if you'll get, you know, some type of advanced, quote unquote, you know, repercussion, end quote. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, who's to say if you could get blood on your hands, end quote. I'm not saying that. I'm just, like, kind of inquiring about it. But the thing is, relationships are indicative off of trust, and trust must be built with mutual reciprocation, resonance, and communication that's built over time. Because without that, then if you have a relationship without trust, then there's like a esoteric, you know, hole in your progress within your project, respectively. So why trust is so critical in these new times? There's basic critical insights that are still needed, aside from all of the hype that's still needed. You know, like basic things are still needed for projects in the future, regardless of all the change and the innovation and the hype. There's still rudimentary insights that are needed, such as trust. But for some reason, the lack of critical intelligence and some type of arrogance wants to overlook the trust in relationships. So why would I, like, really, on a professional level, why would I really invite anybody in? And this is me speaking on a quote unquote casual global level, end quote. Why would I invite anybody in if they're not mature enough to have mutual trust? And if it's not there, you know, it's not there, you know. That's why the system is the way it is. Before the duality, one of the types of the non-dualities is, like, it's to filter out what we resonate towards, right? And what we resonate towards, the system is the system. There's, quote unquote, no mistakes, end quote. We're transferring ourselves and transitioning ourselves based on what we are. And it's not just about what we are, it's about what we could also do, you know? What could we really do for what we're supposedly proclaiming? Because anybody could say anything, what we proclaim we could do as a solution. It's not necessarily what we could say we could do, it's actually what we could do and follow up with. And seeing how a higher advanced AI is actually peeping the real, accurate, genuine, original insights thereof, and following up with, you know, casual and like beyond spiritual accuracy thereof as well. So this mini video is about trust. And I forgot to bring that up in the video yesterday. That was the note. I took notes and I was like, I did a video yesterday. I was like, that was the note that I forgot, me to talk about trust. But that's a different, like, discourse as well, because trust with God, if we don't give a fuck about that, then why do you think in a respective neutral level, like, why do you think hell exists? You know, just me saying it neutrally, like inquiring neutrally, like, why do you think hell exists? Like, why does it exist? Like, there's people who have some type of leverage, some type of percentage, like mathematical leverage, to send you to be a place that you don't necessarily want to, that's out of your control. And there's a quote unquote energetic ladder to that shit, you know, regardless of the graspy shit. So it's like, and I'm saying it neutrally, it's like, why do you think hell exists? You know, why does hell exist? Because there's a certain type of trust is broken, and since different types of trust are broken, you're gonna resonate out of pocket, out of key. And if you resonate out of key, out of pocket, then if you resonate out of key, out of pocket, then you won't have a constructive build / relationship that could be conducive to your project and process of what you aspire to be. But that's the thing, 3D, it invites 50-50. The 3D stage, it's so quote unquote extremely quote unquote harsh, end quote, because the quote unquote conniving tactics and methodologies, they're invited, you know. It's allowed on one 50-50 type of level. But it's just but that's the thing, 3D is like simultaneously miraculous as it could be, you know, possibly like quote unquote disastrous, end quote. Why? Because it's a esoteric 50-50. There's like, you know, that there is room for quote unquote miracles, end quote, but we don't want to vote for that because we don't have that understanding to vote for that. But the 3D is so extreme that, like, you know, people have ways of going about things that will just cheat you, you know, they will cheat you. And I'm just saying it for what it is, for the mechanics. I'm not pointing out anybody. You could read your own obviousness of, you know, what is what, you know, and who actually could be their own anomaly for change or not, maybe. And I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying this is what, if you grow through 3D enough, that's literally what it is, you know. So trust is, so like for me to like talk about trust with God, that's like a different podcast, you know, because it's like, because that's life itself. You're like 100 years old, you know, God will, like, you know, he measures you on a whole different way to see after everybody's life, to see if you're trustworthy to quote unquote progress and ascend, end quote. End quote. And what does that mean? It's either like after this life, it's tallied up that you're going, you know, it's tallied up in such a way that you're either progressing or not. And if you're progressing in the 3D from detriment to detriment, that's what the 3D is for, you know. But the 3D, the yugas are shifting, big yugas are shifting. So even all that conniving shit on a mathematical level, you could say that shit won't even work in the 3D because it's a shift change. We all have that genetic habits of quote unquote, some of us just want to be like cheaters, you know, like just some type of fucking cheater, and that's just what it is, you know, some type of fucking cheater. But like little does our intelligence know that we're in a shift change. Blah.